Matthew 19, verse 26. But Jesus beheld them and said unto them, with men this is impossible, but with God all things are possible. Take note of the word with. When you join with God, all things become possible. Alone, there are many things you can never do. Many things will remain impossible. But when you link up with God, all things become possible. So, if you want to see things happen in your life, please link up with God now. As we look at Bible Faith Revolution today, hear me and hear me well. The day you stop living by faith, that day you died. The justified, declared righteous by God, can only live by faith. And when you live by faith, operating in alignment with God, all things become possible for you. Matthew chapter 17 and verse 20. Jesus said unto them, because of your unbelief, for verily I say unto you, if you have faith as a grain of mustard seed, ye shall say unto this mountain, remove hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. What kind of faith must you have to operate in this capacity? Romans chapter number 12 and verse 3. Romans chapter 12 and verse 3. You must have the measure of faith that God gives. There is the measure of faith that God gives that you need to operate in that way. It is called the faith of God in Mark chapter 11 and verse 22. In Romans chapter 12 and verse 3, hear the word as I read. It says, for I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think soberly or humbly, according as God had dealt to every man the measure of faith. God has given to you the measure of faith that you need to operate in God's class. I repeat, God has given you the measure of faith that you require to live like God. In 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 13, we having the same spirit of faith, the same faith from God, as it is written, God believed and spoke. We also believe and speak, and we see the same kind of result God sees as we speak. We having the same spirit of faith, the same life of faith from God's giving faith to us, as it is written, I believed, therefore have spoken. We also believe, and therefore we speak. God says we are to have this kind of faith, the faith that believes and speaks, the faith that operates like God. Remember, every child of God is to be the image of God here on earth, a manifestation. We are always to remember that God made man in his image after his likeness. And so man is to carry that image of God and live like God, operate like God. How does God operate? Everything God does is by his word. Everything God does is via his word. Everything God makes or God made or God will ever make is by the word. In Psalm 33 verses 6 and 9, for by the words of the Lord we are the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. For God spoke, verse 9, and it was done. He commanded, and he stood fast. For by the words of the Lord, verse 6, we are the heavens made, and all the host of them by the breath of his mouth. The rows of heaven are paved with gold, made by the spoken word. The city of heaven, the gates of heaven, the walls of heaven, everything built in heaven came into being by the word. Everything here on earth came into being by the word. Whatever God will do must be done by the word. Adam was made by God by the word. from the rib God took from Adam, he prepared Eve in one day by the word and brought a full-blown woman in one night, made in one night to Adam. Everything God does is via his word. If you don't believe in the word, you don't believe in God. If you want to live like God, you must believe the word and take the word and go to work with the word. You must. You must. If only you can believe, all things are possible. He says, you can speak to this mountain, remove from hence to yonder place, and it shall remove, and nothing shall be impossible unto you. Everything is possible with God. Faith makes all things possible for you. Until you live by faith, you are dead. You can't do nothing. Mark chapter 11, verses 22 and 23. Jesus said to them, have the God kind of faith. Have the God kind of faith. For I say to you that whosoever shall say to this mountain, mountain, be removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he says shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he says. You can have whatever you say, but until you believe that you can have whatever you say, and you say, you can have nothing. You can have, you shall have, you will have whatsoever you say. But I tell you, until you believe that you shall have whatsoever you say, and say whatsoever you wish to have, you can have nothing. Many of us want to have some things, but we are saying nothing. So we are getting nothing. If you must have anything, you must believe that you shall have those things which you say. And then you must make up your mind to begin to say those things which you want to see yourself have, and you shall have them. If you close your mouth and say nothing, you won't get anything. Now, if on the other hand also you keep saying what you don't want, which you have, you shall keep having the same thing. To change all you have right now, change what you say right now. In Mark chapter 9 verse 23, Jesus said, if thou canst believe only, all things are possible to him that believes. There is nothing that cannot be possible for you if only you believe. Bible faith is all about operating like God, understanding how God operates, knowing with what God operates, and going to work with God's weapons of war, operating like God. That's it. If you want to see Bible faith in manifestation right now, go to work, understudy God, find out how God works, find out with what God works, find out with whom God works, find out how he works his works, and then go to work with what God uses, and then you can get God's results. Christ came here, conquered the world in less than 4 years. The Greeks left Greece talking and went to see Jesus Christ in Bethany. The whole world came to look for Jesus. The whole world, the kings of the earth, came to Solomon to hear the wisdom of Solomon, which God gave him. Once you believe in God, please discover what God expects you to do and go to work with what God uses, and you are going to have the same result. Bible faith is all about understanding how God operates and making up your mind to go the same way, using what God uses, and I'm telling you, you're going to see his results. You must understand that to fail to live by faith means death to the believer. To fail to live by faith means death to the believer. What is faith? Doing what the Lord says. What is faith? Doing what the word says. What is faith? Believing all things that God says in his word. What is faith? Saying always, only all that the Lord says. You must hear from him. You must study his word. You must read scriptures. You must think on the scriptures. You must speak scriptures. You must obey scriptures if you want to live by faith. And that is the key to the life of victory. 1 John chapter 5, verses 4 and 5. For whatsoever is born of God overcomes the world. And this is the victory that overcomes the world, even our faith. For who is he that overcomes the world but the one that believes that Jesus is the Son of God? If you believe that Jesus is the Christ, you are born of God. If you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, you overcome the world. 1 John chapter 5 from verse 1 to 5. If you believe that Jesus is the Christ, you are born of God. If you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, you overcome the world. So the victory that overcomes the world is your faith. Faith in the truth that Jesus is the Christ and that Jesus is the Son of God. When you believe it and say it, God comes to dwell in you. And God cannot dwell in you and you be a victim. When God dwells in you, he both wills and performs whatever he wants. And that's what makes us operate in God's class. When God lives in you, he wills it, he performs it. And if he does that, listen, you're going to manifest as God anywhere you are. Hear me. Bible faith is real. If you want to live and see God at work in your life, choose to believe what God says and keep living your life saying what God says, doing what he commands, operating as he dictates. You will see God at work. God bless you. I'll see you again.